Hi everybody, Captain Al speaking with your training tips designed to help make you a better, more knowledgeable flight simmer, pilot, or aviation enthusiast. Let's lower the HUD and see what is on the horizon for today. Today our briefing will cover the continuation of line flight from Seattle Tacoma, Ksea, to Anchorage, Alaska, Papa Alpha November Charlie. This is part 3 in the Boeing 747-8. Okay, we're in the virtual simulator for part 3 line flight from Seattle Tacoma to Anchorage. Part 3 is a different day today, so things have changed a little bit. Weather's a little bit different. Winds are 3505 knots. We've changed runways now. We're going to be departing runway 34 right. We programmed that into the CDU. It's still the Bangor 9 departure airy transition. Our block fuel is a little bit different today. It's lower. It's at 76,724. Min fuel for takeoff 74,724, and our reserves are less than what we had earlier. They're now at 21.8. I think we're forecast to get there with 26,000 pounds of fuel. If we look at the flight plan, a little bit less time en route, 2 hours and 50 minutes. So our cruise altitude, instead of 340, is now flight level 380. I think those are the major changes that we've had. And you can see that the departure has been changed to reflect runway 34 right. So on the legs page, a little bit different waypoints. It's a 344 heading till passing 932 feet, again, so we don't make a turn. Then we go to Dodvie to whirl at or above 3100, to Atomi, to Brem, then to Bangor at or above 10, to Ari, and then en route. We've got an update on our winds. And you'll notice now that the winds have been pretty much updated. You'll see there's no waypoint winds here for the departure up to Brem, which is fine. We don't really need them. From Bangor on, we've got waypoint winds that have been entered. And now they've been entered all through the route. I think if you remember in part 2, they weren't entered all the way, but they are now. They're entered all the way to Ted VOR and Anchorage. And so these waypoint winds, again, are up to 4 altitudes and 4 directions and speed. And for each waypoint, as we step through, you can see there's 17 pages. Winds have been entered for all of those points for our cruise altitude on. And so if we look on the progress page, 1,272 miles, that changed by a little bit. Flight plan calls for 1,287 miles, and CDU shows 1,272 miles, so again, reasonable. And again, we checked all the courses and distances for the waypoints based on the runway change. And if we go to our VNAV page, you'll see that we've changed the cruise altitude to 380 as well. So with that, we would we're at the point where we've taxied up to box 88. We'll say we don't have the markings on this particular model, the P3D model. I don't have a custom model of Seattle, just whatever's in P3D. And so they won't have the geographic spot markers and the box markers and things like that. So we have ground tuned 121.7. We're on the left VHF radio. We've got our speaker turned on. We're not using VATSIM, so we're just simulating this. And we'd call Seattle ground, Qatari 44 heavy, taxi out of Sierra 10. And then they would say Qatari 44 heavy, roger, you can taxi straight ahead, left on Bravo, taxi to holding point, runway 34 right. And we'd respond, taxiing to runway 34 right, via Bravo, holding point, runway 34 right. And then the first officer would normally go ahead and turn the taxi light on. And then we're ready to go. So we'll release the parking brake. Breakaway power usually is whatever it takes to get the airplane to move, but not more than around 40% N1. These are big engines. There's a lot of mass airflow through the engine, and you can do some serious damage to stuff behind you, so you'd have to be aware of that. Generally, the airplane will start moving. If it's heavy, it takes some time to get it to move, but generally it'll start to move on its own if it's lighter. Power application shouldn't be more than 40%. Certainly not more than 45% N1 to get it moving. Those are reference thrust settings, but you'll see it's not going to take much to get the airplane to move at this weight. So we'll add a little bit of power and we'll start to roll. And on a dry runway, which we have today, our max speed in the turn will be 10 knots or less. And our maximum speed going straight ahead will be 20 knots or less. Usually no more than 30 knots. 30 knots would be about the max, but you'll find that 20 knots is comfortable when you're taxiing, especially on a long straightaway. Of course, you could steer with the rudder pedals. We'll control the nose wheel. Or you could use the tiller. If you're going straight ahead, you've got a choice of either one, either the nose wheel, the rudder pedals, or the tiller. If you're going to make any turns more than 30 degrees, then you want to use the tiller. The rudder pedal controls, 7 degrees side to side. So I've got my window blocked a little bit, so I have to kind of feel where the center line is of the taxiway. And I do not have rudder pedals, so my rudder nose wheel steering application is via the joystick, where I twist it. And that's a little less than optimal, because you're a little more sensitivity with twisting a joystick. You want to find a point on your windscreen where you feel like you have the center line of the taxiway centered with your nose wheel. That's about right there for me, I think. It's pretty close. If we go outside, we could kind of take a look at it and see how close it is. Let's go down there. You see I'm right on it. So that's about, in my view, it's right in this little nook, kind of like right here. There's that little nook right there and right there. If I put my right knee on the center line, that'll pretty much hold me on the center line of the taxiway. And that's a good reference spot. So as we taxi for runway 34 right, we would update the briefing if any is required. Of course, we briefed the runway change that we had, and that's due to it's a different day today than it was when I made the other part 1 and part 2. This is like 3 days later. So weather's changed a little bit. You'll notice when we make turns, we want to overshoot the turn a little bit. Since it's a very wide body. You'll see I overshot the turn a little bit and then start turning smoothly into the center line again. And same thing here, I'll overshoot the turn a little bit. I don't start turning here, but I'll wait till the nose gear is past where I want to turn, and then I'll turn. This is mainly a feel. There's some good references on the side windscreen as to when to turn, but if you're like me, you don't necessarily want to be looking out the side all the time. It's easier to do in real life than it is here. You've got your joystick set up that way, you could do that. For example, I think I have it set up kind of that way. That'll look out the left side, and then if I push it again, that'll look out the right side. So if I want to, I can kind of lead the turns like this. Here's the Category 2 ILS hold line. And since low visibility operations are not in effect, we can taxi past that line. So we'll taxi slow here so we can do our checks. So there's no update to the briefing. So we'll go ahead and come inside again. And we'll do the before takeoff check. We call for the before takeoff check. FO would get it out, and he would say before takeoff checklist complete. I would look at it, verify it, and say checklist complete, and then he would stow it. Remember, those have to be verified, the before takeoff and the landing checklist. And then I would say I'll be in weather and you be in terrain, and we would select those. And then if we're ready, we would contact the tower. We'd switch over to the tower frequency 119.9. I guess we could do that if we go slow here. Here's 119.9, and then we could put in our departure frequency, which is right here, 120.1. We have there as a reminder to put that in, 120.1, so that's standing by. And then we'll start to make a turn here toward the runway. And we'll hold right here for now. Now we call the tower and say, Seattle Tower, it's Qatari 44 Heavy, ready for takeoff, runway 34 right. He says, Qatari 44 Heavy, line up and wait, runway 34 right. Now we acknowledge line up and wait, runway 34 right, Qatari 44 Heavy. And we would verify the signage that we saw 34 right. And first officer respond, I see 34 right. Just want to verify that the entry point is correct of the runway with the signage. And then when we get on the runway, we're also going to verify that the runway heading agrees with the map display. And again, we'll overshoot a little bit. It's a little easier when you can see out the right side, but we can't really see out the right side right now. But you can kind of estimate where that is. Now I have a little better view of where the center line is right there. And ideally, I want to roll right out on the center line. Should be about right there. Now, I like to bring up my, this is just the way I do it. You can obviously do it any way you choose, but because you see we have high terrain off to the east and off to the west. And we'll go ahead and I'm going to select my PFD big, and then I like to have my engine instruments under that. And then if I want to view the ND, it's usually good to have that. Again, remember when you taxi, you could also use the we had such a short taxi we didn't really need to reference it, but if you go to low mileage, 5 miles or less, you'll get the airport map display. So you can see if I go to 10 miles, it goes away. If I go to 5 miles, it's there. Right here, small, but it's there. And that's if the airport switch is pushed. So if the airport switch is not on, then you just get the runway. If the airport switch is pushed and you're in the 5 mile range or less, then you'll get the bring that back on. You get the airport map display. So if I bring that range down a little bit, and let's bring it down a little bit, you can see it better. There's 2 mile range, 1 mile range. There's a half mile range, there's a quarter mile range. And you can see how much detail we get with that. Of course, when you're ready for takeoff, you're going to increase that range back again because you don't want to stay in that low range. Again, you want to be in a range where you can at least see the active waypoint. Or in this case, 10 mile range is good. You could even maybe go 20 miles. Yeah, I'd probably go 20 miles, a little easier to see. Again, we're going to check that we have RNAV, the RNP1 for the departure, which we do. Our actual navigation performance is 0.05, so we're well within that 1 mile RNP. And then we're clear for takeoff. So normally, as taking the runway, the first officer would get the strobe lights on. And he'd turn everything, whatever lights he wants on, other than the inboard landing lights. So he'll turn all these on, logos if you want them. Not necessary today, we're in daylight, so. And he'll come down and get his transponder to TARA. We're going to take that and put it to TARA. And then you should see that on your... Of course, on the ND, it's going to show TA only until you're airborne. So with that, we're ready to go. We'll say we're clear for takeoff. When we're clear for takeoff, the FO would get the inboard landing lights on. Now the time is going to be taken automatically for us in the Dash 8, which is nice. The elapsed time will start when the weight is off the wheels. And so we'll add 45% N1. Stabilize, and then we'll push toga. We see thrust reference toga toga, LNAV armed, VNAV armed. We'll set takeoff thrust, and the first officer will say takeoff thrust set. Next thing he'll call is 80 knots, and I'll say check.
Rotate. Positive rate of climb.
You're up. LNAV will engage at 50 feet. And VNAV will engage at 400 feet. There goes VNAV. And the VNAV's not really going to do anything until 3,000 above the field. At 1,500 above the field, you'll notice TO1 will change to climb 1. And then at 3,000 above the field, we'll get the acceleration of the airspeed bug for flap retraction. So you'll notice we got climb 1 on the thrust. And we're approaching DODV. Whirl, it's at or above 3100, so we're going to pass that no problem. And we'll go, there's some of the hills to the left. Go inside and get the autopilot on now. And you can see now we're accelerating for flap retraction. You can see that now. So we'll go flaps 5, and we'll go center command. We'll go flaps 1. And of course they'd switch us over to departure once we're airborne. Qatari 44 Heavy, contact departure. And we'd acknowledge that. Qatari 44 Heavy, roger, over to departure, good day. We'll go flaps up. And then of course we come down and go to departure. Get that out of the way. 20.1, and of course we call them Seattle departure, Qatari 44 Heavy. We're leaving 5,400, climbing to 12,000 on the Bangor 9 departure, and he'd say 44 Heavy, radar contact. And you can see that our speed today, we're not heavy, so 251. Yeah, we're not over. We wouldn't have to notify him for that, certainly. But if we were probably at 260, 255, I don't even know if I'd bother notifying him. But 260, you'd probably want to notify him that you need higher speed for the climb. And again, you can, as you go, you can adjust your range up a little bit. We can also set our, since we're in LNAV, set our heading bug to course. As we head out to Bangor, we want to cross at or above 10. That's going to be no problem. Again, the computer predicts you can do it because it's blank right here. But we know that Bangor is still several miles away, and we're out of 9,300, so at or above 10 is not going to be a problem. Out of 10,000, you'll notice the speed transition will go away, and now we're accelerating up to our econ climb speed, 313 till we intersect 0.837. Again, we're going to 2,000 feet, so coming up on 11, we'd say 1,000 to level off, or whatever the particular call is, 1 to go, or airlines have different calls for different things. And you'll notice it's 94 miles to our top of climb. Anchorage is another 1252. We'll get there at 0118. We're going to have 23.8 on the fuel remaining, and I think our reserves were 21.8. We'll say ATC clears us up to flight level 280 now. So we'll set in flight level 280 or 28,000 on our MCP. We could initially spin it up and then start the VNAV climb, thrust ref VNAV speed, and then we can continue fine-tuning that. That way all you have to do is spin, push, resume the VNAV climb, and now you can spin it up the rest of the way and fine-tune it. And we'll say we're cleared up to 28,000. And of course, normally in flight, both pilots would have to verify that new clearance, 28,000. Point to it, Both pilots acknowledge that that's the correct altitude, and off you go. At some point they're going to switch us over to center. They'd say Qatari 44 Heavy, contact Seattle Center now 120.3, and we'd say center 120.3, Qatari 44 Heavy, good day, and then we'd go ahead and switch. So we'll do that, just simulating it. Go 1203, and we'll transfer over to that. And then we would contact the center at that point and say Seattle Center, Qatari 44, we're leaving 16,000, climbing to flight level 280. And you'd say Qatari 44, radar contact. Passing the waypoint, we're going to update our heading of course. I always want to do that in the Boeing airplanes. It does not update automatically, unlike Airbus where it does. So we have to consistently keep moving the heading bug to our desired heading as we turn away from waypoints. Coming up on transition now, this would be the transition altitude at 18,000, and at this point we would go standard, and that's going to change our altimeter setting, and I have it set up to do it 3 places, here and here and here. So instead of me doing it individually, you can set it up to do it all 3 places in the virtual simulator. For real, you can't do that. So we come over here and push the selector here to get the standard, and the FO would push his to get the standard, and the captain would push his to get the standard. And then maybe center clears us at this point up to flight level 380, so we'd acknowledge that, and then we'll climb to flight level 380. And again, we both verify that altitude. Notice again, the one thing nice about the Dash 8 is you don't have to bring the gear handle to off, because there is no off once you're airborne, so it just stays in the up position. The hydraulics are depressurized automatically, and then we can do the after takeoff checklist. We could have done that a lot earlier. Once the flaps were up, we could have done the after takeoff, so we'll go ahead and do that. And the FO would bring it up and just say after takeoff checklist complete. In this case, the captain could just look at it. He doesn't have to verify it. He doesn't have to say anything. He just kind of looks over and makes sure it's complete too, but he doesn't have to say checklist complete. The only time you have to do that is for before takeoff and landing checklist. Otherwise, the FO is going to do it. He'll verify it. Captain will look over to acknowledge it, and then he'll stow the checklist. You can see on the ND we have our ground speed, true airspeed, the direction the wind is coming from, 211 at 41. Then we've got the active waypoint is RE. We're going to get there at 2246.9. It's 7.3 miles away, so we're approaching it. And then underneath that would be our current UTC time. Once we pass RE, we'll get the flight plan out and start looking at the times. We could also bring the lights off, depending on where the, some airlines bring them off at 10, some airlines bring them off at 18, you know, it really varies. But a lot of times it's out of 10,000 where you turn these off, but I know there are some airlines that specify out of 18,000 to turn them off, so it depends on what the SOP is. We normally turn them off at 10. Passing the waypoint, we'll go ahead and set our heading bug to course, and then we're also going to go ahead and bring our range up, because you can see now that Ann is the active waypoint, but I can't see it. So I always want to be in a range where I can see the active waypoint. So I'll bring my range up to 80. I can't see it then. I'll bring it up to 160. I'll bring it up to 320. I'll bring it up to 640. And you can see, so that's pretty far away. 522 nautical miles to Ann. And so now we're at a point where things are quieting down from the departure. And we can go ahead and start to get out the clipboard and figure out our times now to Anchorage. You'll notice all the airports in Canada, and these generally will be the airports that are possibly suitable places to go if we need to divert. Depending on the airline configuration, they'll specify whether that's a generally these are airports that have hard surface runways greater than a certain length. The airline can pick the option for the length. You know, it's at least 7,000 feet, at least 8,000 feet. I think at PMDG you can specify it too somewhere. I think it says where it's at least 7,000 feet in length. So it may be suitable in terms of an emergency to put the airplane down somewhere. It may not be suitable in terms of crash, fire, rescue, or airline facilities. So you'd have to take that into account. But these are places we could go in the absolute event that we had to get the airplane on the ground right now. And good to have that up for position awareness primarily. Okay, so we'll take a look outside and see what it looks like, and skies are starting to clear a little bit. Oops, who are those guys? So there's the clouds behind us. There's Mount Rainier in the distance, right there. And you can see the clouds behind us, but look around a little bit. And we'll go back inside. Okay, we're level at flight level 380 now. We're on our way to Ann. And we're going to look at the flight plan now. We've got the ND on the lower left. Got the CDU in the more or less the center. Got the status page below the PFD, and we're going to bring up the flight plan and look at our times now and how we calculate the times. So if you look at the status page, right now you've got the UTC time, which is 2256 with 45 seconds. 1st of May, which is actually set to when I opened the first flight for part 1, and I actually kept the simulator open. It's now May 5th, so we're actually like we're doing this back on May 1st. So the UTC time is actually different than what it is presently, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We're using we can use these times, and the elapsed time is 20 minutes from the time we took off. Now you can also go to the, if you wanted to, you could go to the, let's get rid of the flight plan for a minute. We could go to the data link page, and we could go to page 2, and you'll note that we have our out time, which is 2210 Zulu. Our off time was 2236 Zulu. And right now our flight time is 20 minutes, and that agrees with the elapsed time. You'll also notice that our block time is 46 minutes. That's from the time we logged out. So you can get your takeoff time here, 2236, or you can come down here and just subtract your elapsed time from your UTC time and come up with 2236. So that was our takeoff time, and we're going to predicate the times based on that. Go ahead and get rid of that. We'll bring the flight plan back up. Okay, so up on the flight plan, we can put in our takeoff time. So we can drag that down there, 2236. So if we add 2236 to 2 hours and 50 minutes, we're going to come up with 0126. So that'll be our ETA, 0126. And we could put our local time in there if we wanted to. And then we can start to figure out our times. Now all these waypoints were passed in the climb phase. And now you can see we reached our top of climb, and now we're in our cruise phase at flight level 380. And that's true, we did pass all these waypoints in the climb. Our ETA at Seattle of 0126 via the flight plan. You can see right now we're predicting we'll be there earlier, 0118, with 23.2 on the fuel remaining. So you can see that we have the ETA at CAVOB was 1 minute, and then the individual legs another minute, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and then 1 hour and 1 minute to Ann. So if we add all these up, 1, 2, 3, 7, 12, 15, 16, we get 1 hour and 16 minutes to Ann. And if we add that to our takeoff time of 2236, and we're going to estimate that at 2352, and then you'll notice we have a spot here for our actual time of arrival. And we're going to record that right here. And we're also going to show our fuel remaining at that point would be 44.3 at Ann. So now we have an estimate. We passed these already, so it really doesn't matter. But we have an estimate for Ann now at 2352 with a fuel remaining of 44.3. And so as we approach Ann, we're going to check that we're approaching, and then we'll check the next outbound, which is to Udine at 292 course and 59 miles, and we'd check that against the legs page. So with that, I'll release the simulator, and we'll come back as we approach Ann. Okay, we're back. We're just approaching Ann. We'll get our flight plan back up here. And as we approach Ann, as you can see, we had 2352 at Ann, and then we added 7 minutes to that, 2359 at Udine, another 11 minutes, 0010 at Flips, and then our estimated time of arrival at SIT is going to be another 3 minutes, 0013. One thing we can do as we approach Ann within 10 minutes is check that we're on course to Ann, and then we're going to check our outbound heading and our outbound mileage to go from Ann to Udine, which is 289 at 59, and then again that checks here 292 at 59. And we can look on our map and just verify that. And we'll make sure that when it crosses Ann that it starts to turn to Udine, and then from there proceeds on course. Since we checked the outbound course from Ann to Udine, we can take our marker and we'll just draw a single hash mark through Ann. We'll say that's our procedure. And that's just verifying that now we're approaching Ann. We're checking the outbound from Ann to Udine, checking our mileage and distance, and comparing them against the flight plan. So we'll go ahead and release the sim and proceed to Ann. One thing you'll notice is that if we go to the route data page and we go to the waypoint wind page for Ann, you can see the forecast winds that were put in from our flight plan at 37,000 were 163 at 33, and you can see we're 161 at 32. So pretty darn close, and we're at flight level 380, of course, but only a couple degrees difference between the forecast winds and the what actual winds we have. We'll go to the progress page. You can see that our estimate at Ann is 2350, and I think our flight plan is 2352. So you can see it looks like we're going to cross Ann at 2350, and we'll be 2 minutes out of schedule. And that's kind of what we're checking for, and then we're going to write that down on our flight plan. We're also going to check the fuel remaining at Ann, and we're going to note that and see if we're ahead on fuel, behind on fuel, or right on the flight plan schedule. Now, as we approach Ann, you'll notice that it'll drop out because it will not be the active waypoint anymore. Udine will be the active waypoint. And then the next waypoint after Udine, which is Flips, will appear on the progress page. As we cross the waypoint, we'll go ahead and put our heading bug to course again, or on the heading. And we'll verify the airplane turns. We'll verify the distance to Udine, 56 miles, that's good. And then we can go to our position report page, and we can check what the actual information was at Ann. And this is nice because it's in a position report format, so if you were doing a oceanic crossing on an AT-track and you had to make a position report via HF, if you didn't have a CPDLC, then you could do it with this format because everything's here that you need to make a position report. But we can see for purposes of our flight plan now, if we bring our flight plan back up, that our position was Ann, our actual time of arrival was 2350 at flight level 380. Udine is the active waypoint. We're going to get there at 2357. And then the waypoint after that is Flips. Our destination ETA is 0120. It's got the temperature outside, it's got the wind, the Mach number, and that was our fuel over Ann. So what we can do now is look at our actual time of arrival, and we'll put that in. And you can see on the position report page that our fuel is 44.6, and the flight plan shows that we should have 44.3. So we're actually 300 pounds better on the plus side with our actual fuel that we crossed. So you can see that we're doing plus 2 minutes better on the time. So we're going to put plus 2 for the time, and for the fuel, we're up 300 pounds. So we'll put plus 300 for the fuel. And we'll put that up there. So that's kind of just keeping track of our time and fuel score, basically. So at Ann, we were plus 2 ahead of schedule, and we're plus 300 on the fuel. We're ahead on time and we're ahead on fuel. And then what we can do is we verified the outbound. We don't need to do any plotting because we're not international. So we'll take our little marker again. And again, this is our procedure. Then we'll go ahead and make a X through that, and we're done with that waypoint. We'll go ahead and resume the simulator, and we'll come back just shortly before Udine for our flight plan again. Okay, we're approaching Udine. It's another 10 miles ahead. And we'll go ahead and look at the flight plan again. And we're estimating 2359 at Udine. And right now we are still going to be 2 minutes ahead of schedule, it looks like. So we'll go ahead and check our outbound from Udine to Flips, which is 291 at 85 miles. And we got 288 at 85 miles. So not much of a course change. And we'll go ahead and mark that off that we're approaching the waypoint. We've checked it, we checked the outbound course, and now we'll let it pass over Udine. Again, if we wanted to, just for the heck of it, we could check the winds at Udine, see how close they are. Got again 157 at 31. That's at 370, 146 at 29, so pretty close. I'll go back to the progress page, and again we're going to see UDIN drop out, flips become the active, and the next waypoint will be sit. And this is so close we probably wouldn't need to do a check there, but we certainly could. We go to the position report page. There's for Ann. We'll see it flip. It just did. We passed UDIN at 2357, flight level 380. Our estimate to flips is 0007. We're still 0120 to Anchorage. There's our temp and our wind, 0.84 Mach. And there's our fuel remaining. So if we go to the flight plan, again we were estimated at 2359. Fuel was 42.3 on the flight plan, but we have 42.5. So we're up 200 pounds and we're ahead 2 minutes. So we'll come over here and we'll go plus 2 minutes again. Or plus 2 on the time. And of course this goes much faster when you're just putting a pencil to it. And we'll put the fuel score was plus. We're ahead. We're not behind, so it's plus. And we'll go 200 pounds since we're ahead by 200 pounds. And then we'll put that up there. And so then we've verified the outbound. We've passed over UDIN. We're going to flips. And now we can take our marker, our pencil, line through it, and we're done with that waypoint. And now we're looking at the next one, which is flips. And we're going to get there at 0010. Right now we're 3 minutes ahead of schedule if we get there at that time. And we'll have 39.4 on the fuel remaining at flips. So that's how you do it as you compare waypoints and continue along the flight and keeping a time and fuel score on the flight plan. Okay, that'll complete part 3 of the line flight. Next up will be the approaching the top of descent point into Anchorage on the area arrival. We'll be doing the Yeska 6 arrival with the Juliet Oscar Hotel transition. And right now the ATIS shows the ILS runway 7 right is in use. So we'll be back for part 4 approaching the top of descent point. Thanks for watching.